Welcome to this unique financial channel. It's called Million Dollars Made Easy. On this channel, we look at different financial concepts that you really need to know about. Instead of trying to cover them all in one video, we kind of break them up. In this video, I'm going to look at what is sequence of returns risk and how that can affect your financial planning, especially when you get to the withdrawal stage. What we do is look at actual historical numbers from the S&P 500 for the last 100 years, which allows us to see a wide range of possible outcomes going in the future. We figure if your plan can survive some of these worst case scenarios that we're going to see, you can feel more confident about your financial planning. Again, these are the returns we use. Nobody knows the future. So let's go ahead and run a case here. Let's say you have $500,000. Again, we want to show you what sequence of returns risk means. Basically, what it means is what order do the returns come, and especially if they happen when you first retire. If you have some negative down years, that can really affect the endurance of your nest egg. So we want to look at somebody that's, say they need $4,500. Say they're getting $2,000 from Social Security, which means they're going to need $2,500 from their nest egg. $4,500 minus $2,000 Social Security. And what we do is run the numbers for every single year using these returns. These are, let me just show you the 1925 numbers going down through here. And we run it for every single year. And the results are going to end up over here. How much money you have left after 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years, given these numbers. First of all, I want you to notice this is a 6% withdrawal rate, which is quite a bit above the 4% withdrawal rate. So we're going to see that in this case, you're probably going to have some issues, especially with some of these down years right here. Let's go ahead and update this. Again, this is going to calculate, this is using a 60-40 asset allocation, 60% staying in the S&P 500, but 40% going over to a cash reserve account. So when the market's going down, you're taking these funds out of the cash reserve account, not out of the S&P 500, because you don't want to be selling low. You don't want to be taking this money out and knocking down your nest egg or net S&P 500 even quicker. So what we see when we run the numbers for the last 100 years, this right here is the 20-year, how many times in 20 years you'd be out of money in the last 100 years. 21% of the time, you can see them going down through here in red. Those are the times you run out of money after 20 years. And it's even worse after 30 years. You have a 21% failure rate after 20 years and a 32% failure rate after 30 years. This is the actual graph for the 20-year. You can see the problem areas during the Depression years, the problem areas around 1960, late 60s and early 70s, because what's going on there? We had some down years right here, so that affected that. This is the 20-year graph. This is the 30-year graph, even showing more problems around the 73, 74, late 60s, and also, of course, it hasn't been 30 years since the 2000, so it's not going to show up there, but you can see there's quite a bit of negative returns right there. In fact, we saw that it would be 32% of the time. So, what could you do differently if you're concerned about this? Again, sequence of returns risk simply means when do these negative years, which are inevitable, when do they first hit you? If they hit you early in retirement, they can really be devastating. And what we see right here, using 1925 numbers, you're out of money and you got 146,000 left after 20 years using 1925 numbers. These are 1926 numbers. Now you're out of money in 19 years. Again, that was way back during the Depression years. So let's move forward to more recent times. Let's look at the what could have happened in the 1990s leading up to the year 2000. Because again, we had a down decade. We had 3 down years and then down 37%. We had a really good decade in the 90s. So watch how this works itself out. If you look at the numbers from 1996, let's look at 1995. This is always a summary box, by the way, of what you have left after 10 years, 15, 20, and so on, given each year that we pick here. So these are using 1995 numbers, which you can see 1995 numbers. You had 5 really good years before you got hit with these 3 down years. So that sequence of returns allowed you to have enough built up so when you hit these 3 down years, it didn't affect you near as much. In fact, look at the numbers you have left after each of these time periods. After 30 years, you're actually growing. You'd have $1 million left. Again, withdrawing this amount, taking into account Social Security. But as we go down through, you're going to see these numbers change. 1996, down to 163,000 after 25 years. Again, that's not too bad, but it's you have quite a bit less than what you started with after 25 years. Watch what happens in 1997 numbers. Now you're down to 150,000. Don't even make it 25 years. 1998 numbers. Actually, you're out of money in 19 years, 1999, in 15 years, in the year 2000. If you start out with 3 down years like you would have in year 2000, 3 down years, you're out of money in 14 years given this scenario. But as we see, 21% of the time in the last 100 years, given the returns for the S&P 500, you'd be running out of money in 20 years. 30 years, it'd be even worse. You'd be running out of money 32.4% of the time. Now here, what could you do differently? I want you to notice something. This is a 60-40 asset allocation. Watch what happens if we just change to a 70-30. In other words, you're going to leave a little bit more in the stock market so it can take advantage of these returns. Now you have a little bit less in the cash reserve. Watch what happens. We go from a 21% failure rate after 20 years with a 60-40 split. But watch what happens. 10%. From a 21% down to a 10%. Now, we're still going to have problem areas during the Depression year and around the year 2000. But other than that, 90% of the time, you do not run out of money after 20 years. And it looks like 22% of the time, you still run out of money after 30 years. We can still see those problem areas right there, but not near as many as there were before. But that's what we wanted to show you is when do these returns, these negative returns first hit you? That's, again, what sequence of returns risk. When does this a set of returns hit you that are negative? If they're at the first part of your retirement, they can really be problematic. But we saw if we went from a 60-40 asset allocation to a 70-30, that cut that in half, from 21% of the time having a failure rate, using numbers for the last 100 years, down to 10%. Watch what happens if we do one more thing, just to help out just a little bit. What if after negative years, you don't give yourself a COLA? After positive years, you do. For example, if you have positive years right here, you'd go ahead and increase this by 3% a year. But if you have a negative return, the very next year, you don't take a COLA. These are the 3% COLA, and after those years, you do not give a COLA. So if you had 3 down years, you would not give yourself an increase. That'd be kind of painful. But let's see if that makes a difference with the 10% failure rate. See if it makes much difference during these really bad down decades of 2000 and Depression type years. Did it help much? Recalculating, that went from a 10% failure rate down to a 7% failure rate. So it didn't help that much because, again, these were so problematic. You had 4 consecutive down years, then you had a down 35, and you had 3 consecutive years. And those were the Depression type returns. We had 3 down years and then down 37. So those were really problematic times to be in the market when you first retire. That's when this sequence of returns really caused problems. Let's do one more thing here. Let's go instead of a 6% withdrawal rate. Again, that's quite a bit higher than the 4% rule. If we just do one more thing, I'm going to go back here to leaving it the way it was. Let's do 60-40. And we saw that there was a 21% failure rate. But let's, instead of doing 6% withdrawal rate, let's go on to 4,000, which is 4.8%. Which is quite a bit closer to the 4% rule. Again, it was 21% when we had these numbers, 60-40, and not touching the COLA at all, leaving it whatever you picked was 3%. 21% failure rate. Now you're down to 4% failure rate, going from $4,500 a month down to $4,000 a month. Why? Because instead of needing $2,500 from your nest egg, you need $2,000. Increase that by 3% a year. Then your money you'd be in really good shape. 96% of the time. Here again, just have the problem around 2 years, around 1929, 1930, and this 1 year around 2000. And every other year, you'd be just fine. How about the 30-year graph? 30-year graph, we'd only have the problem during the 28, 29, and 30 along in there. But folks, that sequence of returns, when those negative returns happen, that's so crucial. If they happen when you first retire, that's when you can have an issue. That's when you might want to change your asset allocation. You might want to change your COLA, maybe even take negative COLAs if need be, but you need to make some adjustment. But first of all, you really need to be closer to the 4% rule than the 6% withdrawal rate that we started with, the 4,500. So again, that's what we do on this channel. We run numbers for people. We just love doing it. Please consider subscribing to this channel, but kind of pick out each of these different concepts for each video and kind of run some numbers, just kind of explaining each one of these more in detail so you can actually see the numbers in action. Please subscribe, please share, please like this video, and thanks so much for watching.